On May 19th, 1999, Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace was released. I was born just 2 months later. Born into a world that had been steeped in Star Wars for over 2 decades, and was about to enter into a new era of media overexposure. Now, due to the timing of my birth and status as an average white guy in America, I was a big Star Wars fan growing up. Well, that, and because of how much Star Wars media absolutely dominated the early 2000s into the 2010s. We had Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV shows, Star Wars video games, Star Wars books, Star Wars comics, Star Wars toys, and more Legos than you could possibly imagine. There were Star Wars graphic tees in school almost every day, and I literally ate my cereal with a Star Wars spoon. It had permeated into pop culture and reached the peak of what a piece of media could be. Star Wars was what I thought movies were, what I thought they were supposed to be, and everything else paled in comparison to the sense of wonder that those movies gave me. But somehow, despite all of that, it's been 10 years since I last watched one of the first 6 movies, and just 2 years ago, I said this in my review of Dune Part 2, stating that I would never watch them again and basically didn't need them anymore. So, what's going on? How did we get here? Who was responsible? These are just some of the questions I'm going to attempt to answer today, as I walk you through the journey of a jaded Star Wars fan trying to find the magic again. Okay, so just to kind of lay the groundwork for kind of what I have seen before this, just so you understand my history as a Star Wars fan and kind of what to expect in this video. I'm going to flash what I have seen in some capacity or what I've seen all the way through, how many times I've seen it. I'm also going to show what I have not seen, either because I have seen very little of it or none of it at all. I'm also only going to show things here that I cover in this video, so if you don't see something here, it means I didn't bother to watch any of it at all. So if you came here for 20 minutes of riveting information on the Bad Batch, I apologize, that is not going to happen here. You could say that maybe I'm not doing my entire due diligence, but I couldn't be bothered to watch literally every single minute of Star Wars that exists. And just a small heads up, I'm going to spend the most amount of time here talking about the prequel trilogy. They are what I, really grew up on the most, being a kid born right before the 2000s and as those movies came out. It's what I kind of have the most opinions on, what I have the most, kind of strong emotions toward, for whatever reason. I love most of what's on this list regardless, but yeah, that's kind of what I ended up spending the most time writing on. So without further ado, let's get it kicked off, and obviously the only place you can start, 1977's Star Wars. I mean, look, there isn't much I could say that would be new about this movie. We all know this movie. We all have heard people talk about this movie for probably hours in our life. It's objectively great. It's subjectively fun. I think there's very little wrong this movie does. Yeah, this movie works. It works on every level, and it works so much for me. I adore it. I adore everything about it. I will get into maybe the one caveat. That is, I'm going to try not to mention this too much as I go over the original trilogy, that the post-release CGI that George has, kind of inserted into this post-release is not my favorite thing in the world. It's funny that I grew up watching the theatrical cuts on VHS, and I remember when these cuts came out and they had the new stuff in it as a 15 or 14-year-old, however I was when I first watched those. I was very excited and thought it was very cool that there was new stuff. And I remember thinking it was maybe novel at the time and being like, oh, like this looks better. This looks like, what I expect movies to look like these days, because I've been, more ingrained to, expect big, bold CGI strokes and not really appreciate, old school special effects for what they were. But I definitely feel that way now, where I was disappointed in a lot of the CGI stuff and was like, oh man, I wish I could, remember what it used to look like or what it was supposed to look like. Really wish George had someone in his life kind of telling him to pump the brakes a little bit with the revisionist stuff. So yeah, watched this back in October. Absolutely loved it. It's still got the magic, and I don't think it fully brought me all the way back to my childhood, kind of complete adoration for Star Wars, but it's a great first step. Moving on, let's get to Empire Strikes Back. And yeah, I mean, truly, what is there to say that has not already been said about this movie? It's widely considered the best in the series. And it's kind of crazy in 2026 to look at a movie like this and think that a big IP sequel came out that was this quality and that in a lot of ways improved on the one before it, and was maybe an even bigger hit than the first one, with a new director who hadn't really done this kind of thing, and George taking the backseat. It all works so well. The cast obviously had really gelled at this point. I think Mark Hamill had more come into his own as an actor and as Luke. Harrison Ford is, maybe the most suave guy alive in this movie. Everyone is so great. Carrie Fisher, we miss her every day, truly. And watching this movie is just a reminder of all of that. It was really a flash in the pan, and it still blows my mind to watch this movie, and maybe even blows me away more as an adult now in my 20s. How long has it been? 40 years after this movie, maybe more. That they pulled it off, and that it works this well and it is this good. It's really fantastic. And so I think I don't really have any criticisms aside from the CGI, but we already kind of went over that with A New Hope. So yeah, this movie rocks. It is probably still number one of anything. There's probably one thing that could, I think, take its place in my brain, and we will get to that much further along in the video. But for now, Empire Strikes Back, 5 out of 5. It really is that. It really is that. Moving on to Return of the Jedi. The plan with this kind of rewatch of everything had been to do it largely with my wife, to watch at least maybe the first 6 movies with her, because she had kind of seen them growing up, but never really sat down and watched them all. So the plan was to watch them together. We watched A New Hope and Empire, and after about 3 months of asking if we could watch Jedi, I eventually had to give up that venture. So that is why there's a gap between when I watched Empire and when I finally got to Return of the Jedi. So there had been some anticipation. It had been 3 months of me being like, man, those first two, they I was reminded how much they rocked. I was reminded how much I loved them. And so the anticipation kind of grew in the 3 months that I was kind of just waiting to get back around to this movie. And maybe that was kind of to its own detriment. We'll see. So let's get to the review. Yeah, safe to say I was kind of bummed watching this movie. I had really hyped it up in my mind, and honestly, it got off to a great start. You open with Jabba's palace, and although if you think about the plan to save Han for more than like 4 seconds, it completely falls apart, and it's like, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, it is one of those movie moments where you're like, okay, I need to just kind of let go for a minute because this plan sucks. But that first act rocks regardless of that. Unfortunately, past that, I don't love a lot of the rest of this movie. I think Dagobah feels like a chore, and I know how important thematically and plot-wise Luke returning to Dagobah is, and having the moment with Yoda. I'm not saying that none of that is important, but it just feels so slow and like a chore this time around, especially after you're coming off the high of Jabba's palace. And then, I guess beyond that, nothing on Endor worked for me this time. I didn't find any of it particularly riveting or that visually interesting. The speeder chase is fun, but yeah, I don't know, like none of it clicked, and I was pretty disappointed and pretty bummed. By the mid to end point of this movie, just like, is this really it? And kind of the end battle in space at least kind of just feels like the end of A New Hope again. It's like, oh, we've got to go make one last shot on the Death Star again. I don't know. I was let down, and I wanted this movie to be everything that I remembered it being as a kid, and it had some flashing moments, but overall it wasn't there. Now, I'm saying a lot of bad things. I still gave it a 3.5, and that magic is still there. It still oozes charm, and all these actors are still so great. And it still has the 80s charm that you know and love about the first 3 Star Wars movies. So yeah, you'll notice as the Letterboxd reviews flash, I kicked it into high gear after Jedi. But yeah, going into Phantom Menace, into the prequels, I was pretty stoked. I think I was I was more excited to watch these than anything else. And these are what I think people talk about these movies online the most, at least in the circles that I'm in. Like these are what I see get discussed, and there's a lot of revisionist history about the prequel trilogy. The internet loves these movies these days, and I think my generation really goes to bat for these movies. So I was excited to see what worked and what didn't. I'm excited to get into these. I was excited to get into them in the moment, so let's talk about it. Obviously, I want to say right off the bat, the score is probably too high. Nostalgia goggles were on in full effect. Like I mentioned in the review, I think this, for whatever reason, was maybe my favorite one growing up. It's the one that I think I thought about the most. It's one I think I wanted to watch the most. Maybe it's just because it was released 2 months before I was born, and I just have a connection to it. But I always loved this movie, and I still do, even though it's really bad. And I accept, and I know about all the flaws. They're not good. This movie has many issues. And yeah, I think this movie gets better if Jar Jar just is either different or doesn't exist. Obviously, the purpose he serves narratively, is important. But like, can we tone the Gungans down or just like make them slightly weird people? Like I don't know why we went full caricature with it, George. Amongst many things, this movie is probably a bit too long for how slow it is and how bad the pacing is. If they had found some fat to trim off, I think maybe that would have helped. I mean, they stay on Tatooine for way too long. I think in my perfect world, they race and get the hell out of town. But no, I mean, we've got to explain the midichlorians and how Anakin is space Jesus. I mean, really, George, like, do we really need Immaculate Conception in Star Wars? Like, is that where it absolutely had to go? And, him kind of having sole creative and directorial power over this trilogy, again, I think this is like, it's immediately evident. And he needed someone to rein him in, as most creatives do in some capacity. It's not a bad thing. Luckily, the fun stuff is still fun. Again, highlight Neeson. I think he's such a standout, and the stillness that he has in his performance really comes through with the awkwardness of the dialogue in a good way. I think he's the only person that the dialogue works for. I mean, Ewan McGregor, love him to death. Portman as well. I think they all kind of needed one entry to like get into these characters and what this writing was like. But yeah, no, this movie is not very good. 3 is way too high, but I love it for some reason. So all that to say, it's maybe not the worst one. Not sure. Let's see what I thought. And man, as I'm looking at this, I cannot believe I wrote this. And I'm sorry for relating Anakin Skywalker to Lamar Odom. Look, I think making funny jokes about this movie is about all the energy I have to give it at this point. It's not good. Geonosis and the Arrival of Clones, is enough cool factor to carry this to the score that it has, and to be kind of a cult movie amongst my peers growing up and still to this day. Beyond that, I think there's nothing here. This movie gets memed more than anything. I think there's got to be more memes and jokes in this movie alone than the rest of Star Wars combined. It's not even worth, pointing out the specifics, but yeah, this is just, it's not good. It's flat. The dialogue is bad. It's boring. It wants to be a political drama, but its political drama isn't good enough to warrant any of that. And then the action is good, but it really just comes at the very end. I don't want to get too into semantics of like, the plot and thematic things that I don't like about the prequels, but like, man, did they find out, like, does everyone know what Anakin did, to the Tusken Raiders? Because he should have been evicted from the Jedi immediately. And yeah, I mean, I did the Stephen A. mocking of Padme, but like, this man admitted to you that he murdered women and children, and then I don't know I can't remember if it's before or after, you're sitting in a field having a simple conversation, and he's like, fascism might be good, actually. I think we should do that. And she's like, just chill. Like, what is his redeeming factor that keeps her coming back? I can't understand it at all. I really can't. And I don't know if it's Christensen's fault that I don't think the charisma is really there to warrant Padme keeping in love with this man, but like, what is going on? There's no prophesied chosen one bullshit that can keep me invested in Anakin as a character personally at this point. Like I truly find him reprehensible, and I'm looking for moments that I can find him to be redeemable that are in this trilogy, and not just like, well, when you think about it, you know, he saves the day, and I don't care. Oh gosh, I'm getting too into it. We haven't even gotten to 3 yet. Luckily, Attack of the Clones is a sick name, and it was enough that, like, as a kid, you hear that and it's like, that's the coolest one, because the clones are the coolest thing of all time when you're 7. So that, you know, the name carried a lot of weight growing up. But yeah, there's no saving this. Bad movie. Let's move on to the Clone Wars movie, the animated film from 2008. Sadly, this movie is not good. The animation was still a work in progress at the time. They clearly had not fully reined in what they wanted the art style to be. I don't think this movie looks good at all. I've never really been a big proponent of 3D animation. I prefer 2D in almost every single facet. But here, it's what they went with, obviously, for the movie, and then for the entirety of the show. And this is Ahsoka's first appearance, and I guess thank goodness for that. The main thrust of this is them trying to save a baby slug named Stinky. I know this is a kids movie, I get it, but like, there's nothing of note other than Ahsoka is here, and then it started the show, which we are not going to cover right now for reasons, but we will get to shortly. Okay, moment of truth. I think I wrote the most about this than any other entry. I mentioned earlier that the prequels have received a lot of hype in the last couple of years, a lot of general positivity toward them. I think this is easily the most, the biggest receiver of that praise. It was re-released in theaters around a year ago, and there had always been talk about it before, but that really spurred the internet and the Star Wars fandom and culture onto speaking about this movie as if it was, you know, Citizen Kane. That was maybe around a year ago. I think it was last spring. Was the first inkling of like, okay, I need to get back into this. I need to try them again, because those Letterboxd reviews came pouring in, and I was stunned, and I wanted to go, but I don't know. I didn't want to jump straight in. I didn't have time to rewatch them all. It had just been too long, and maybe I should have gone. Maybe the theatrical experience would have been better with people that were excited, and maybe it would have pumped me up. I was excited to get back in, see what people were so hyped about, see if I was hyped about it, because I came into this truly ready. I wanted to love this. I wanted to be like, yes, like this is the best one from the prequels. This is like the best one from when I was a kid. This is so fun. This rocks. Like I truly wanted to feel that way. And maybe, you know, the way that I went about watching this the first time was wrong. I did the double feature of Attack the Clones into this. You know, I'd had a couple drinks, so by the time 3 came on, you know, I was a few deep. But again, I was still stoked. Like I like to think I was in the right mindset. I wanted to love this. So I'm trying to butter you up, and I promise, I hate that I have to say this. This is not rage bait. Like I promise I'm not trying to be different. I'm not trying to make people mad. This is not clickbait. I'm not trying to get attention. Like this is honestly how I feel about this movie in 2026. I want to apologize that that was as poorly written as it was. Again, I had a few drinks by the end of episode 3 that night. I don't think I'm a great writer regardless, so not a great combination of anger, alcohol, and poor writing skills that went into all that. So I'm going to try to explain in more detail, in more competency, why I had such a strong visceral reaction to this movie in the moment, and why a lot of that emotion still carries with me here. Yeah, I mean, I was really upset, and I was so stoked to get into this movie, and then as soon as it came on and I started, you know, disliking it, I think the opposite happened, where any excitement I had got turned into like an equal amount of vitriol. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted this movie to bang, and I just was like, what am I missing? If I could try to condense my, disdain, my criticism of this film into the simplest terms, it would be, this movie fundamentally fails to convince me in any capacity that Anakin Skywalker could fall so far so fast and retain that fall for as long as he does in the original trilogy. I don't know if stuff got left on the cutting room floor, or if George was just way over his head by the time he got into the script and didn't know, how he was going to show in good faith how Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. But it feels like he had since 1977 to conceive this, and I just can't believe this is what he thought of. We have maybe the greatest villain of all time in Darth Vader, and you've got 30 years to come up with a backstory for him, and it was boiled down to something that I was laughing out loud at how poor I thought it was. To get into some of the specifics, and I'm sorry if I'm reading more for this part. I had a lot written down, and I think if I don't read, I'm gonna ramble too much. But just some of the silliness, I think, Anakin confronts Palpatine about being the Sith Lord around the hour 4-minute mark. Less than 10 minutes later, he helps kill Mace Windu, and less than 10 minutes after that, he's slaughtering children. And his reason for doing so is the creepy guy who's definitely not evil but talks about evil shit all the time, claims his wife is going to die unless he also has evil powers. And then he's upset that the Jedi aren't giving him special treatment. I'm like, I'm sorry, this just reads that he's a petty idiot. That he's petty and stupid. And I mean, I guess that's valid and there's people like that out there, but I'm sorry if I want a little more from the characters that I love and care about so much. If like I need more than a 20-minute sequence that like shows the fall. And I know that you can be like, well, there's stuff from all 3 of the movies, but like, again, talked about it on the last thing. I don't think there's really any indication in the first movie that like this kid is going to be deeply, deeply evil for many years and kill millions of people probably. And then in the second movie, it's like, well, he did get angry once and kill some people and killed his mom. And he does maybe like fascism a little bit. And it's like, okay, I guess. And then we get into this and it's just like, he's just angry and upset that, he's not being given preferential treatment, and that like this old guy says his wife's gonna die and he's really scared about that. I don't know. And again, I'm just so wrong about this, but like him confronting Palpatine, he's in the right mind to confront Palpatine, and he does so, and he's like, this is the good thing to do. You are like, he finds out he's evil, and he's like, you are bad. I have to do something about this. He has the conviction, and he goes straight to Mace Windu, and he's like, I found him. This is the guy. We have to go kill him. And Mace Windu's like, hey, you are too emotionally charged for this right now. You're not coming. And then because of that, he's like, okay, turbo evil. Okay, I'll just be turbo evil and kill children. What are we talking? What? And then he's just like, that's the inciting moment of like, I'm going to spend the next, 10, 20 years, however long it is in canon, just being the most evil person in the galaxy, bar one person. And we're going to blow up planets, and I'm going to like terrorize civilians, and we're going to enslave people. And like, I really like, because of that one moment, I'm going to become a terror, that's never been known. I'm sorry. That sucks. That's really stupid. That's really dumb. That's how we got there. That's how Darth Vader is created. Are you serious? I don't see him really wrestling with any of this. The only thing he's wrestling with is the potential death of Padme. But like, that's it. And it's just that an old guy is saying it, and then he has a dream about it. And he has so many resources at his disposal to try to do something about this other than be evil. And I can't believe that this is what we got. I just really can't. And I was yelling at the TV, and I mean, I try not to do too much of like, well, and the Jedi are so dumb, how do they not see Palpatine? But like, the man is literally like Space Netanyahu, and it feels like Yoda or Mace or somebody should have seen any of this coming. And I know, look, I'm watching, I'm speaking now after having watched it all. I know there's some Clone Wars stuff that's like, I get it. And I know there's the prophecy stuff, but I'm just like, if you're setting up a story and the prophecy is a part of the story from the beginning, I can see it. But like, to come back around and do a prequel and be like, now I'm going to insert the prophecy about bringing balance to the Force. And it's like, oh well, he actually the prophecy is real because he brings balance to the Force in Return of the Jedi when he finally. It's like, yeah, I don't think for me, no bringing balance to the Force matters after you've been Darth Vader for that long. Like, none of that matters to me. I don't care that you do one good thing and you kill the only guy more evil than you at the end of your life, and that fulfills a prophecy after you've already set up like the greatest empire the galaxy's ever seen, that's more oppressive and more controlling and brings more death than anything ever has. And it's like, well, but he brought death. He brought balance to the Force, and that's okay. And that's what the prophecy said. It's like, no, so many people are dead. What is going? Like, this sucks. I'm sorry, this sucks so bad. Not to mention that, like, if that is your rationality of like, well, the prophecy and he does come back around. Well, if we're canonizing all this, then none of it even matters because the sequel trilogies happen and it throws it all in the trash, and Sidious comes back apparently, and it just is crazy that, like, I can't watch this and not think about stuff like that too, and like even the little semblance that I think that I could enjoy gets destroyed by later movies. And it was utterly infuriating in the moment. I'm obviously pissed off right now, and maybe again I could be so wrong, and I'm gonna be so happy if I'm just like, if everyone is like, you're stupid. I hope that everyone's just like, you're stupid. But this is just like, I could not escape these feelings during this movie, and still to this day, 2 months later, however long it's been since I watched it, like, I just cannot. I can't get over it. I can't escape it. And I feel like I'm maybe just stuck here now. So to talk some good about the movie, I talked about the hype moments in Aura, and it delivers. It delivers in that, like, in spades. I do think, like, that's where the 2 stars are. This is 2 stars for hype moments in Aura, and then, it gets docked 3 for pissing me off more than I could have possibly imagined. But, like, Battle over Coruscant, Kashyyyk, and Utapau are just awesome, and they will always have my heart. And those were the scenes that I fantasized the most about as a kid with Legos and playing the games. Like, those are awesome scenes. And Order 66 will always, like, get me, or it will always get me. I'll always, like, fight back a little bit of a cry. It gets docked extra. Like, this should be higher than 2 and 1 because of, like, the cool stuff, because, like, the cool stuff in this is just as cool, if not cooler, than anything that Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones does. But those movies did not, like, fully incite, like, rage in me, so they, the scores are just obviously going to be higher. And you might be thinking, I mentioned 3 set pieces and I didn't mention Mustafar. No, I don't have much for that scene. I remember, like, thinking it was cool as a kid, but never being like, Mustafar's the greatest fight scene ever, and, like, it's the best Star Wars, it's whatever. Like, if I wanted to watch some dance choreography with some flips mixed in, like, I'd go see a cheerleading competition or a ballet. I think it's, like, the most, like, clearly just super duper choreographed fight scene in all of Star Wars. And maybe that's a dumb thing to say, but, like, it just feels, I don't feel any tension in that scene at all. Like, it does not, my heart doesn't go at all. I'm not feeling any tension. I'm just like, yep, this is how it goes. And they just do boom, 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 boom a bunch of times. And then one guy falls into lava. And it's like, it doesn't get me. That scene doesn't get me at all. I finished this and I was like, I'm the problem. And what must be the issue is that I am ignoring 150 episodes of television that are out there that supposedly reinforce this and explain this. So it was this there, and then I decided I'm gonna watch Clone Wars. I've been meaning to do it for so long. Obviously, this is great, a great perfect opportunity to do this as I'm watching through all the movies. So yeah, I jumped into Clone Wars right after this, and we will get to that later when I finished the whole show. But obviously, it took a while. So we are going to move into The Force Awakens. Sorry if this feels like a hard cut for me being super pissed off. And then we're going to go into Force Awakens. I need a breather after that. Okay, let's try to recover. Let's get into The Force Awakens. Like, this was the biggest event movie in my life at that time as a 15 or a 16-year-old at the time. I mean, I was so stoked about it. And this trailer gets talked about a lot online, and for good reason. Like, you go back and watch this trailer and it bangs. Like, whoever cut that trailer deserved an award. So the hype was very real. I know I didn't expect this viewing, you know, I wasn't fully anticipating anything amazing, but I have fond memories of this one. Yeah, let's see how it went. Yeah, I don't think like I have a ton of negative things to say about this movie. I think it's a really good time. Obviously, like, if you're gonna copy A New Hope, like, you at least know you have good bones for a story there, and an entertaining film. And I mean, what truly shines here are these actors and these performances. I think the casting here was fantastic. I mentioned, you know, Driver. I think Adam Driver is the best part of the sequels. I think he absolutely runs away with everything interesting that possibly happens or possibly could happen in these movies. And Boyega in this one specifically, you know, what happens next is different, but I think in this one has so much promise and so much heart and so much character that I loved Finn when this came out. He was probably my favorite character when this came out. I don't think I had fully appreciated Driver's performance and Kylo Ren as a character yet. Daisy Ridley, I think she's doing exactly what is asked of her and exactly what she's needed to do. She just never stood out to me as much as the other two, and that probably is just because I was a young boy instead of a young girl, and that's completely fine. And then, yeah, Harrison Ford, he was never as much into Star Wars as he was into Indiana Jones, and he kind of was reluctant to do this, but I feel like he's giving a great performance here, and like has a lot of soul and a lot of heart. And I mean, yeah, what a way to go out. I wouldn't change anything about that for sure. But yeah, all that fun stuff to say, and I kind of touched on it, you know, a bit in the past couple reviews, but I really feel like this sadly undermines a lot of what the prequels were trying to do, and a lot of the greatness about the original trilogy. If you're really seeing them as one contained work, I think this does a lot of damage. And yeah, just Disney's inability to have like a single new idea is front and center here. Luckily for them, with this specific sequel, like I said, it's a damn good time, and that's what I care most about. And I'm giving that credit where it's due here. And I don't want to, like, I wanted to have fun with this one, and it worked. And so I don't have as much, you know, negative things to say, other than just that I feel like the existence of these in general just undermines a lot of what the previous movies had done. I was trying to get this wrapped up before the match, but we still have 3 pages of dialogue left. Let's get into The Last Jedi. We've made it to, I think, the most polarizing entry in the series. So I was very curious to see how I would feel about it. I don't think I've seen this movie since theaters. I maybe saw it once or twice. I don't think I've seen it, you know, at home in any capacity. I remember being a defender of this movie when it released. I remember really liking it. This was one of the first times I remember really feeling like I was having to defend a movie. And I don't really remember what my reasonings were at the time. I just remember, I think it was probably more just blind Star Wars devotion, that at the time I was just like, no, this is Star Wars. I love it. I have to love it. I have to defend this. And I have slightly different thoughts now. Let's just get into it and see what I thought of my review. I think I summed it up decently well, my thoughts at least. I think I enjoy Johnson's nuanced take of the universe and its characters. It's one of the few times post-1983 that the characters are making interesting adult decisions and having to act and react to them in ways that are morally challenging. I know that's difficult for a lot of Star Wars fans to, you know, swallow, but that's what the cool set pieces are there for. We get thought-provoking themes and you get jingling keys. You know, we can both have fun. We can both enjoy something. You know, I'm not going to sit here and debate for 5 minutes about whether or not Rian Johnson understands Star Wars or understands Luke. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's good writing, and that's all you really should be asking for in a movie like this, is just someone that just is interested in writing something that is new and different and complex. And to criticize that doesn't really make any sense to me. If you want to debate about that sometime, let me know, but that's how I feel. All right, look, getting into Rise of Skywalker, I didn't really want to watch this. I'll be brief. I don't think we need to discuss this movie for multiple minutes or anything about how bad it is. Somehow Palpatine returned is kind of enough to get the picture of why this movie fails, why this movie is creatively bankrupt. It's just really, really poor, and it's not even that fun. So Really bad movie. Yeah, I don't want to dwell on it. Moving on. So let's just move on quickly. Sadly, we don't really take a massive leap up from here. A movie that I, believe it or not, had somehow not seen. I didn't really care to. I don't remember hearing much great buzz about it at the time. That's probably why I never ended up going after the first week or so. This is the only Star Wars movie I will have not seen ahead of time. So. Well, I think my comments regarding the fact that this could have been a more interesting crime thriller in a lot of ways, whether you go more the gritty route or the suave route or the Bond route, I think there's interesting things to do there. I don't want to sit here and dwell on the Lord and Miller cut or what could have been if they had been allowed to stay on for longer or finish the project in its fruition. But I think what we got was relatively boring, and it will be seen as a huge downgrade as history goes on. At least, shout out to Alden Ehrenreich, I don't know how to say his name, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Cannot believe I'm talking about Fleabag in a video about Star Wars, but here we are. I like some of the performances, but I thought the writing was boring. I thought there's like one good set piece maybe, and I didn't really care for the ending very much. So, yeah, just kind of whatever. But enough about that. Moving on to what I believe is a more important film that spawned a more important TV show, maybe the most important Star Wars piece of media that's come out in my lifetime. Rogue One and Andor. I'm going to try to talk about them at the same time because there's a lot of thoughts about both, and they're just going to come out, and I hope that it makes any sense. I could probably write and talk about this show and movie for an entire video. And maybe I should have, and I'm hoping this doesn't take up too much time. We'll see how much I decide to gush about in the next few minutes. But, and again, I'm sorry if I'm going to be reading a lot. I want to get my thoughts succinct. I think this is the most finger on the pulse that Star Wars has been since George Lucas was, making a space opera that was basically just a critique of the Vietnam War. Andor is without a doubt the best thing I've consumed in the Star Wars universe since Empire Strikes Back. It isn't just the best Star Wars TV show by a long shot. It's one of the best shows I have watched in years, if not one of the best shows I've ever watched in my life. Obviously, we didn't start there though. It goes back to 2016 with Rogue One. I think it's really interesting that a story like this was given a chance, and that these voices were given a platform. It's one of the few times someone has had a really unique idea in Star Wars and in this IP landscape, and it was given the resources and the flowers to produce something, and it stays within the limits of something we already know and have established. Whereas, prequels and sequels, I think, take stuff that's already been established in lore and mess with it and change things and make things irrelevant or recanonize, whatever you want to say. I think Andor and Rogue One perfectly take something that was relatively innocuous, and if Rogue One and Andor weren't good, then they would have read like that. But we know exactly where this is going. We know how it's going to end, but it still keeps you strapped in. And if I can, juxtapose that to Revenge of the Sith, saying that like the end of that movie, I was not moved at all. I was not particularly intrigued or invested in it's because you know exactly where it's going. And it's kind of just like, okay, well, let's kind of get there. But I think where both of these stories succeed the most is it doesn't, and particularly Andor, it doesn't just tell you the story of how the Death Star plans got to Leia. It does so much more storytelling about the world, particularly I think about the Empire, and it really puts you face to face with the gruesome realities of what the Empire was in many different ways. I mean, the Gorman massacre, and the destabilization of the government on Gorman and subsequent takeover of that planet and its resources by the Empire is harrowing and rings really true to a lot of events that we see take place in the real world. Obviously, the thing that has maybe been talked about more than anything else about this show is the prison arc with Cassian, and the slave labor that takes place there, and the captivity that they experience and never being able to leave, being cogs in the machine that the Empire is, and many of them, at least we know in Cassian's case, without any case, he should not have been there, and he gets put there because the Empire needs workers, and they're willing to bend rules and put people in prison that have no reason to be there just because they need a workforce. I mean, we could talk about privatized prisons and the kinds of things that they do, but again, these are real ideas and thoughts that resonate within the world that we live in and exists in Star Wars as well. And I think that's why they work so well. It really is more just normal people in real world seeming events. I think it resonates way more than in, for instance, A New Hope, you know, the destruction of Alderaan at the hands of the Empire. While obviously a terrible event, but it at least for me always feels at arm's length and a bit like cartoonishly evil, where it's like, yeah, like that's really bad, but I don't feel like you can really get put first hand into what that kind of means for the people that knew people on Alderaan, other than Leia. But she doesn't carry a ton of remorse with her, at least about it, and it kind of just is one of those things that just kind of happens, and you're just supposed to know that they're really bad, that's all. Whereas with Andor, it's like you're in it, you're living, you're seeing the rebellion be built brick by brick, and the people that did it and why they did it. Like we are very, very seldom in Star Wars do we just get shown the why firsthand and not told, and it's all there, and it's so well done, and I just could keep going for so long about that. I do think as great as Andor is, it honestly, I thought it was going to elevate my experience with Rogue One, but if anything, it honestly, I think, lessened it. I still gave Rogue One a fair score, a high score at least. I think I probably would drop that on another watch, but I got so into Andor and Cassian that it's, when Rogue One boots up, I just want it to be about him, and I don't really care as much about Jyn Erso. However important to the story her and her father are, and still how well written I think and well acted Jyn is. I still think she's very cool. I just am gonna like Cassian way more because I've spent way more time with him and have way more emotional stock in the character. But obviously, all that being said, this movie still rocks, and it features some of my favorite set pieces and fights in Star Wars to date. I mean, like I mentioned, Donnie Yen doing some very awesome, hand-to-hand fights that I think rival, or if not better, than most, Jedi Jedi lightsaber fights in the series. And then I also just love some of the set pieces. Like, for whatever reason, Jeddah has just always really stuck with me, and the things that happen on Jeddah, the eventual destruction of the city, I have always found magnificent, and it really rung true again with me. And Saw Gerrera was a character that really stuck out to me as a kid. And yeah, it's just, there's a lot of good stuff here, and I could keep going for forever and ever, but there are other people who have said better things and said them more eloquently than me. So please go seek out more opinions and thoughts on Andor if you're interested in them. So that officially wraps all of the movies and main entries and one of the TV shows. We are going to shift into a bit of a grab bag of the rest of the TV shows and any other movie rewatches I did. This will primarily be the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith rewatch. I had never sat down and watched all of the Clone Wars all the way through, and I've been meaning to for a long time. So I was excited to do that, and obviously was really hoping that it would improve my appreciation for Revenge of the Sith, and hopefully improve my view of Darth Vader as a character slash Anakin Skywalker. So yeah, I jumped in, I watched all of Clone Wars, and then we watched some of Rebels, Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett. And I'll get to why I watched what, but we're going to start with Clone Wars and a bit on Revenge of the Sith. So, to make a long story short, did watching all of Clone Wars increase my appreciation for Anakin and Revenge of the Sith? The short answer is not really. I have a much longer answer, and so let's read the review first, and then we'll get into kind of the nitty-gritty. About the show itself, I really enjoyed it. Something I've been wanting to do for years, especially in the last couple of years when there have been kind of the last final seasons released and other stuff been tying it in. It feels like a good time to go back and rewatch all of it. It's obviously a very story-rich era for Star Wars, which is why it seems like there's so much that has come out, around the Clone Wars, which is funny because it's only like 3 years in universe, but it feels like just an infinite amount of media and stories about the Clone Wars. All that being said, the show can lean on the adolescent side. Obviously, it's a show for kids, especially the early seasons are very childish. The first few seasons, that aside from like 1 or 2 arcs, it was a kind of a slog, and I was like, oh, this is this isn't working for me as much, and the animation wasn't great at the time. I think a lot of the character designs are pretty weird. The art style is just, I don't know, like specifically like Padme, it just looks super weird to me. And there's a good few characters that I think are just strange. So yeah, nothing much was really going for it. I wouldn't say I like cared at all until the Mandalore plot. Like that was the first time I was like, okay, this can be good. There's good stuff here. Like I should pay attention. I should lock it. You get obviously a very in-depth look into these characters, much more than we had before. And kind of like I mentioned at the top of this section, that it's very cool, and I appreciate getting to spend a lot of time with these characters and getting to learn about them. But it doesn't go away. But then you put on Revenge of the Sith right after, which is what I did, and it's like, these don't feel like the same people. The detriment of doing a prequel show like this that's intending on building on very well known and well established characters. You're just gonna have some of it in the mud where it's like, this doesn't all add up. This doesn't necessarily lead directly in to the next thing, and that's fine. And I'll kind of get to where my mind is at with that concept in a bit. Yeah, just to briefly talk about some of my favorite parts of the show. The arcs that stand out are, as I mentioned, Death Watch, Mandalore plot, Umbara, Zygeria, Maul Rules Mandalore, Ahsoka on the Run, and the Siege of Mandalore. These are kind of the obvious picks. I'm not, breaking the mold with any of this. It's funny saying, some of this out loud. It's like everything interesting that happens in the show basically happens about Mandalore. That's like the only anytime Mandalore is involved, the show is good. Outside of that, it's like they're shooting very low percentage. The Order 66 stuff is cool, and I enjoyed that arc and the conspiracy about it, but it kind of only exists to solve a problem they created. When they made this show and they gave the clones as much autonomy and character and relationships as they did, I think they realized they were digging themselves a hole of like, okay, we're gonna need a reason why these clones who we're showing are like very, very close with the Jedi. How are they gonna turn on them? So while I do I think that the Order 66 stuff is cool, but it feels like a solution they created to solve a problem they created. And I don't know if it was straight up rewriting lore. I don't know what the lore around Order 66 was before this, but it's kind of that part's kind of iffy for me. But still, mostly enjoyable television as far as that stuff goes. On a quick downside, I personally don't love how much Maul is used and how massively important kind of he becomes in lore in general, and then specifically in this show. I mean, I think it's kind of where either he came back first in this or Rebels, I'm not sure. He didn't really have any character to speak of at all, just from Phantom Menace, and then everyone just thought he looked cool, and so it's like, okay, no, we got to make him important because people like the way he looks. He's gonna sell toys. But yeah, it feels like he just shows up again and again in all these shows. I much preferred Cad Bane as kind of the recurring villain in the early seasons of the Clone Wars. He felt new and interesting. But yeah, I don't know why I don't like Maul. I think it's just he was really nothing before this, and I don't think I ever cared much about him outside of thinking he looked cool, and now it's like really felt like he was shoehorned into this just to be like a recognizable villain who looks super evil. And so I didn't care much for the backstory and for all the stuff on Dathomir. Like I just couldn't be bothered. Anything that involved Dathomir or the Witch Sisters or whatever they're called, like it felt like that kept coming back up. It was like anytime something bad happened in the show, it was either Maul or the witches, and I was like, okay, I don't know, it didn't work for me. None of that worked for me. But the true shining star, the true spark of the show is Ahsoka. I think it's pretty rare to create a new character like this at the time they did, and it to work and to be a home run. I think the two best and maybe only really great examples of it are, as we've spoken at length about Cassian and about Ahsoka now. I think they nail it, and Ahsoka became kind of like the reason I wanted to keep watching the show. I think a big part of that is that she's kind of Dave Filoni's brainchild, like it's the one thing that he I feel like fully got to create and fully got to be the lead of, and so he has really wanted to keep moving her along, moving stories through her, and I think it works well. I think like the attention to detail that he has put toward her and the amount of care toward the character works out, and I think she's really great, and I really cared about her as a character. Honestly, you know, I was like, Anakin, you can screw off at this point. You know, I know what you're about to do, and I know that you're gonna hurt Ahsoka, and it's gonna piss me off. But yeah, I thought the character had such a profound impact on the series, so much so that, you know, the Clone Wars was long, and as I got to the end of it, I was pretty ready to be done. And the thought of watching anything else in its full length began to get daunting, and I wanted to just do this video. I was like, I don't know if I could watch Rebels, Bad Batch, blah 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 blah, all that. So I kind of just decided I would follow Ahsoka directly. And so what I did after Clone Wars was I looked up a list of every appearance Ahsoka has, and in any show that she was in, I watched her. So I watched any of Rebels that she's in, any of Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett that she was in, and then I watched the show Ahsoka. Just as like, I'm gonna use her as the through line. I'm gonna use her story as kind of the canon for me of like, this is what I'm focused on. Anything that comes through her is what I'm gonna watch. And I think it worked pretty well. I mean, maybe that's blasphemy. I know some people seem to really care for Rebels and like it, and I thought it was good. I just, after watching the first couple episodes, it's like, I just don't think I'm gonna get fully bought in here. But I watched, you know, a good few episodes from each season of Rebels, and then, you know, the scattered stuff of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett that she is in, and then I watched all of Ahsoka. But yeah, I mean, to kind of try to come back around on all of it, I think the Clone Wars is awesome. I think it's very cool. There's also a lot of bad stuff in there. You know, I'd be lying if I said I watched, you know, the episodes where it's just about the droids. I watched the first few arcs, and then by the time, you know, season 3 rolls along, I think anytime it got to a droid arc, I was pretty ready to be done with all that. But overall, it's really great, and giving us Ahsoka is all that really matters. Just to briefly touch, you know, I kind of said that Rebels was fine, but I didn't fully buy in. I had seen season 1 of The Mandalorian when it released years ago, could not get into season 2, and like definitely can't be bothered to watch that again, although I guess with the movie coming out, I might at least watch a recap or something. Book of Boba Fett, definitely not. Only watched the one episode for Ahsoka. And then the Ahsoka live action show, it's just not very good. I don't think it's very good, and I kind of wish this character had never gone into live action. I wish that she could have just stayed in animation. I feel like it's where the character thrives, the character design thrives. I just didn't love the live action character design, but in the animation, it's. I mean, that, like, the end of Clone Wars Ahsoka character design, like, that's peak. And man, the end of that show is so good. It was I guess it's season 5 or 6. I think it's 6. Right after you've got Ahsoka on the run, and I'm so locked in, and then she like is not in season 6 at all, and then luckily she's a big part of season 7, and that's probably, I mean, I think that's probably the best part of the show. It's probably my favorite part of the show is the final season. The ending of the Clone Wars made, you know, the first 2 seasons of slog worth it to get through, I think. But again, I don't think it meaningfully improved my experience with Revenge of the Sith or the character of Anakin. I can't perceive them as the same person. And I think this is a good time to transition into something I think this is kind of going to be one of the last things to talk about, kind of a wrap up. But I mentioned this in what I just talked about, and I think I mentioned it in the Andor section as well. But I think my biggest issue with Star Wars in 2026 is that trying to watch it all canonically in, you know, release order or whatever, and trying to find the through line that keeps the whole series alive is pretty difficult. The idea is that it's the Skywalkers, and that's the Skywalkers are the through line, and while that is certainly an idea, I don't think it works for me in terms of like keeping me constantly engaged and wanting to care about it all being one big continuous story. I mean, we have so many creatives, good, bad, and ugly, all making different attempts with different motives at making, you know, Star Wars art and Star Wars stories. And it really feels disconnected, even in George's own work, even when it's, you know, even in the prequels. I think it doesn't flow, at least in the way that I want it to. And the best way that I can find enjoyment with Star Wars now is to just focus on it in batches. And I saw a quote recently, and I think it was either from George Lucas or from someone that was like, you know, Star Wars is kind of should be viewed like campfire stories that you're hearing every once in a while, and they're coming from different people, and, you know, everyone's got their own twist on it. There isn't, you know, necessarily one true, this is all canon, this is all absolutely true, and blah blah blah. I think it's too much, and it gets on top of itself in the worst ways, and it just does not work as I've just tried to watch it all through in the last couple months. It just does not flow in the way I want it to, and I found myself getting frustrated with trying to connect the dots and trying to make it all work. I think the thing that I'm landing on now is that, yeah, I just want to focus on it in batches, and like if I just focus on the original trilogy, it's just brilliant, and it's all so good. And then you go to the prequels, and while they have so many flaws, if I eliminated, you know, the fact that they are leading, like that they're leading into an already great work, I would probably have enjoyed them way more. If like you just sit down and watch those for a good time and don't think about the original trilogy, you don't think about the sequels, I think like there's way more to enjoy there. You know, you can only suspend your disbelief so much before, you know, it's just going to take over. But I think like that's the only way I'm going to be able to keep moving. I think this could even extend to like things that were not great. I didn't mention yet that I did watch The Acolyte, and, you know, it was second screen content, I'm not going to lie to you, but I thought it was kind of cool and like okay. And, you know, when you don't have a chud in your ear bitching about Ki-Adi Mundi and how the Sith don't work in this or whatever, I think it's fine. And it's like, it had some fun stuff in it. I didn't really care for the characters that much, but like I was at least entertained enough to be like, I guess I want to know what's going to happen next. You know, we obviously just talked about the Clone Wars a lot, and the Clone Wars is so awesome. But when I finished that last episode and I immediately put in Revenge of the Sith, it was like a big deflated balloon. And again, I think like Revenge of the Sith kind of got ruined for me because I was trying to do this whole like direct through line of everything. And I think if like I had gone to it a year ago and just like watched it in the theater, like when it came out, when everyone was really stoked about it, without trying to like do this whole big journey thing, I think I probably would have enjoyed the movie more. But yeah, I mean, here we are. And then, yeah, I feel like going Clone Wars straight into Revenge of the Sith, I was like, oh yeah, it was a harsh reminder of like, oh yeah, none of this like really happened. You know, as soon as you put Revenge of the Sith on, it's like Ahsoka ceases to exist, and that sucks. And like, that's not fun. And I don't want to see it like that. I don't want to watch all of Clone Wars and be like, oh yeah, but none of this really matters because it all kind of like goes away. But it doesn't work like that for me. I think you can kind of see it like how comic books work, where it's just you've got different works by different authors, and sometimes they connect in interesting ways. But, you know, for the most part, you might read just this guy's run of that character, and that's kind of a contained work, and you're not always necessarily trying to piece it together with other people's works. Obviously, all of these works are in concert with each other, and they're all having conversation, but I really like, I think in my own personal experience moving forward, I just am gonna have to like take these works at face value in a vacuum. You know, I've been watching the Maul show. I happened to start coming out right as I was writing this video. It's been fun. You know, I don't care too much for the character. The show kind of rocks, and the animation's great, and the fights are cool. I don't really care about anyone in it. I couldn't even tell you where that show takes place in the Maul. Like, is it after? Is it like the newest piece of his lore? I don't know. And I don't really care either. It just seems kind of cool. And so I'm just going to watch it. I also have to briefly talk about one of the last things I watched. I finally got around to Tartakovsky's Clone Wars. I thought for some reason that this wasn't available, so I didn't bother looking for it. But it is available. So I did watch it. And all I got to say is he masters the intensity of the Clone Wars better than literally anyone else in 3 to 5 minute batches, no less. He actually makes Grievous cool, which was something I thought the Clone Wars just abundantly failed at, and I don't think Revenge of the Sith actually does that great of a job of it anyways. It's just he just kind of shows up and has like one cool scene, and you know, he let's be honest, he exists to make toys, and that's fine. But yeah, I want to mention this quote. So in an interview, Tartakovsky, you know, mentions that Lucasfilm was disappointed in the toy sales for the first 2 prequels, and so kind of why the Clone Wars original show existed and why General Grievous exists is because they're trying to sell more toys. And Tartakovsky specifically mentions this. He says, George Lucas pitched General Grievous to him and his crew, and he pitched him as this ruthless, totally capable Jedi killer. but later developed him into one of those old B serial villains who does something bad, twirls his mustache, and then runs off. And man, does that ring true after watching all of the Clone Wars. He doesn't ever like feel like he really does shit. He just shows up and goes, hey, I'm the bad guy, and then disappears. And then you watch Tartakovsky's Clone Wars, and General Grievous is like, anytime he's on screen, it's like a horror movie. And it works. He's like this dastardly, skilled, evil guy who's terrifying, and the Jedis are legit. They're so scared of him. They're so scared of him. And he like climbs around on the ceiling in the dark and like pops out and kills people. It's crazy. And I'm like, where did all this go? And so I don't want to say that watching Tartakovsky's Clone Wars like made me dislike the Clone Wars main TV show. But there was some aspects where I was like, he nails Grievous. And it's the only thing I think I've ever actually enjoyed Grievous in. So, you know, really, really brilliant stuff, George. Like, it's another note on just George just not having the facilities for this, I think, at the time. In the 2000s, he was way too focused on other shit to be, like, making a good follow-up to Star Wars if he's more worried about the toy sales. Okay, I think I'm going to try to put a bow in it. I think I'm going to, you know, I've probably missed a lot that I wanted to talk about. And I've probably been vague and weird about some of this. Like, this is not probably the most coherent thing you've ever heard in your life. But I think I've at least attempted to talk about the stuff that I really wanted to get in. I'm sure I've yapped more than enough. The final segment is going to be about this beautiful box set of OG VHS tapes. This is what I grew up watching. These were the cuts of the movies that I knew and loved. And I've obviously finally brought them back home at some point after visiting my parents, and got the VCR hooked up. Sadly, I don't have a CRT, so I did have to watch them on a flat screen, which was, you know, unfortunate. But I thought it was smart to after I watched everything, after all of it, I went back and I just watched these again on the original cuts, and I gotta say, like, this, I mean, all of these, but like, this is where you find the magic. If you're someone like me who is looking for it again and has been tired of where everything's at and just can't keep up with it, can't be bothered, frustrated, whatever you're feeling, I think if you can obtain these, I don't think they're that expensive. If you find like beat up copies online or something, you can probably, I think they're decently cheap, but if you can get this, get a VCR, this is where it is. This is where the magic is. It's in here, man. It's in this film. I promise it's there. And I mean, just watching a VHS for the first time in 15 years at least. I'm sure I put one on at some point in middle school or high school or something. But like, putting this in, and then first of all realizing that you have to rewind it and it takes like 30 minutes or whatever, but putting in A New Hope and having to rewind it and like kind of watching the movie backwards, I don't know, it was really fun and I loved it. And this was when I was like fully like, yeah, I'm bought back in. I mean, I watched, like, let's see, I have the math here. I watched 125 hours of Star Wars content over the last few months. And it was worth it to come back to this. Like, it was worth it, you know, for these to be the final, you know, the final escapade, the final step in the journey. And just to look at these boxes, man. I mean, they're so special. I think it's just, they're great. And I have nothing bad to say. Like, if I was to do the re-review, but if only, like, could have only just hammered in these specifically, like, I would have just gushed about Star Wars and how much I love it. But man, you can't stream this. This doesn't exist. And this is a reminder that you should own physical media, and they can and they will take things from you if you own it online or if you're streaming it. Nothing is sacred, nothing is owed to you, and you are just the consumer, and everything they can and will, everything they can put on the chopping block, they will someday, in the name of revenue and CEO's yearly bonus. I promise, like, start collecting physical media, get on the train. It will make things matter more to you. So that was a lot. So in conclusion, Star Wars is a jumbled mess of lore creative voices and expression, animation styles, canonical timelines, messy characters, brilliant characters, contradictions, rewrites, and money motivations. But the heart and soul of Star Wars, the hope, the family, the dreams, the falls, the rises, the deaths, and the life, the true through line, the true continuity. These things will never fail to capture me and convince me that I need to consume roughly 125 hours of content all over again. So to speak to myself from March 3rd, 2024, you still love Star Wars, and you always will. Thank you.